This podcast brought to you by Darby Field Advisors, elevating local impact and enhancing global engagement. Principals Matthew Bartlett and Scott Merrick create local leverage to achieve client success while devising unique strategies that help clients gain a competitive advantage in the marketplace and around the world. Find them online at darbyfieldadvisors.com. So please welcome to the New Hampshire Journal podcast, former U.S. Senator, former Ambassador, and potential future U.S. Senator Scott Brown. Senator, welcome.
Michael, it's good to see you, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, we want to have you on. What is anyone talking? Well, obviously they're talking about Joseph Epstein and crazy ICE. There's a million things they are talking about besides the Senate race. So we want to get to some of that in a second. But first, I want to ask you the question that I'm always frustrated because I don't get very in-depth answers from candidates. And I don't think they understand how important it is to New Hampshire Journal readers, which is when you're out everywhere and you go to tons of stuff. I see a lot of stuff, your social media feed, you're meeting with Republican groups, the small groups. What are normal people talking about?
Well, the first thing they're talking about is obviously the race, and a lot of them don't really care that, Chris Pappas and John Sununu are supported by the DC insiders. They actually look at it as a badge of honor. Even, we had a plan whether the president endorses me or he doesn't endorse me. Well, he didn't, but it's up to him. That's fine. But the fact that he didn't, we had a plan. We're going to execute it right to the T, and it's a good plan. So a lot of the activists, grassroots, people that voted for me before, when they remember I stopped the Democrat supermajority, people that have moved here, they're coming towards us. We're still raising money. We're locking up votes. And they look and they ask, like, who's John? Like, where's he been? Right. And you've been everywhere. You've held the barbecues for, 2 cycles. You were Trump's ambassador. You've been supporting the House and Senate PACs and individual candidates. Where's he been? And I say, well, he's part of the World Economic Forum, so he's a globalist. And then he's also, been mooching off the big banks that he bailed out and advising them, supposedly. I mean, even right now, he's on Boston Scientific's board. He hasn't resigned. I've given up everything except coaching and my band to do this. And he's still kind of mooching. So they're like, well, we're with you. You just keep working hard. So it's been very, very encouraging. But that's the political side. On the other side, they're concerned about the high cost of energy. And I'm glad the governor and her state of the state, referenced the fact that we're going to increase nuclear capacity here. I think that's a good thing. Seabrook's right down the head. It's permitted for 2. It's probably easier to do than most. Other individual, smaller nuclear, I know Representative Cole is working on that type of idea. The safe borders, the sanctuary cities, supporting our law enforcement. These are all things that, quite frankly, Chris Pappas does not support. And so there's a distinction there. And there are things that you never hear John even talk about. Right. So those are kind of the top 3 or 4 things.
Okay. So you mentioned some political stuff. You mentioned some policy stuff. Let's do policy then, because the politics is always there. So you mentioned energy prices. The problem is there's this super cheap natural gas that's about an 8-hour drive away in Pennsylvania. We can't get it here. Your friend, President Trump, has talked about getting it here. He, used the wind power that New York wants as leverage to try to get a pipeline going, but it's not really happening. And you make a good point. Senators Hassan and Shaheen don't support expanded natural gas. They don't want the expanded natural gas. If Senator Scott Brown were elected and you've got states like New York and Massachusetts blocking the flow, how would it be different than having a Senator Hassan or Senator Pappas or even a Senator Johnny Sununu?
Well, because I support it. I support us getting lower and more cost-effective clean energy. I support bringing it in from those countries, and I would work with the administration to lift those roadblocks. And like the president's doing with the wind farms, using that leverage to make sure that we can get, the cheap delivery here. I mean, why are we paying an astronomical amount of money for energy and these other states are holding us hostage? And where has our delegation been? Well, they have no juice with the president. Let's be real. They're not going to do anything. And respectfully, if and when, God forbid, Chris Pappas becomes a senator, it's 2 years. He's not going to have any juice there either.
So, and it's fascinating. I saw an event with Toby Rice, who runs EQT, which is the biggest natural gas company in the country. And he pointed something out that I didn't know just a couple weeks ago. The place this winter that's paying the highest prices for natural gas, New York City and Boston. The place on the planet with the lowest price for natural gas is Western PA, that whole Appalachian Marcellus Shale stuff. I mean, it's like you can take a train in an afternoon there. But I'm back to, if the federal government won't act, and if you don't have voices from New Hampshire fighting for that, for the feds to step in and either pressure the states or fix permitting so that the states can't have a total stranglehold, there's more balance, then nothing's going to change. And so far, I'm one of those people who says it doesn't seem to matter who we have in the federal delegation. Nothing seems to change.
Well, it's one of my top priorities. It always has been, making sure we get good, clean, efficient energy. And with Boston, there's really no excuse because they have the major port there. They can
Right.
bring it in, very easily, and they can distribute it not only there, but we can get it up here. It'll be a little slower and more expensive, but at least we're going to get it. Unleash that opportunity that's there. Number one. Number two, yeah, the permitting and siting is very important, and you need to make sure you streamline that process as New Hampshire's trying to do with housing.
Right. So you mentioned that people are talking about the utility prices. Obviously, they're also talking about housing. What do you think the federal role is in the housing issue, or is this a state issue and it's up to the legislature and Governor Ayotte to address it?
Well, I've been on housing boards for about 20 years now. The most recent one was the Bipartisan Housing Policy Center. Ron Terwilliger, who was the head of Habitat for Humanity. I've been on that forever because, as you know, I lived in 17 houses by the time I was 18. Affordable housing is very important for people. And a lot of it comes down to the siting and permitting and the overregulation within the states. So, yes, the question that our state is wrestling with, okay, do we have a federal standard that just kind of eliminates states' rights? And the states are then saying, well, do we have a state standard that's going to eliminate the local cities and towns' rights? That's a real question. Live free or die. The ability for us to self-govern is huge here in New Hampshire, and that's the question. And I think the governor's addressing it. She's identifying properties that we didn't even know we owned on the right of ways where the highway system is, to see if there's a mechanism to put better and more affordable, easier housing that's not overburdened by the overregulation, by the zoning board of appeals, the historical commission, the environmental groups. And so they're doing a lot. I whatever they need, and it's probably with regard to infrastructure, the on and off ramps from the highways, the sewering, those types of things is where I believe I can do a good job because I've done it before.
Right. So we had a poll out in December asking New Hampshire how they feel about Donald Trump, and we got the lowest number that we've ever seen. You're out talking to Republicans all the time. Where would you say New Hampshire Republicans are regarding President Trump based on where they have been in the past? Because everybody's, even people you love, you have good days and bad days. How do you think the Republican primary voters are feeling about the Trump presidency right now?
Well, let me start with how I feel. And
Okay.
I think that's important compared to first of all, Chris Pappas hates him. Okay, we know that. John Sununu, basically, what did he do to sell his soul to get the endorsement? Because he's going to now have to answer the very questions you're asking me. How do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? Because he's been silent and he's been a never Trumper, he and his family, for, since the president first ran. I told the president when he asked me to be an ambassador that I would, in the endorsement back in 2016, that I would be honest with him. I tell him how I felt. If I felt things are going great, I'm going to say it. If I think we can do it differently, I'm going to say it. You're probably going to get mad at me. He said, it doesn't matter. That's who I am. So I will comment. Listen, I thought you did a great job on Maduro, but I disagree with him that we shouldn't be running Venezuela. I think he did a great job with Iran. I thought he was right on the nuclear issue to get rid of the nuclear capability.
Should we hit Iran again? Do you think we should hit Iran again?
I think he's doing the right thing with diplomacy. That's what he's good at. He gives them every chance, whether it's Putin, whether it's Russia, whether it's Venezuela. They've given him chances, and if in fact we need to stimulate that type of situation where the citizens are not being massacred again. Listen, they're not a good people. They're exporting terrorism around the region of the world, and I would support that decision.
So that's how you feel about President Trump. Do you think the voters
Oh yeah,
are feeling?
sorry, my bad. Yeah,
No, it's
listen,
good.
yeah, there are a group of people that, as you know, I would say it used to be like 38%. It's probably down to 30%. They love him regardless.
Right.
Then there's the folks that love what he's doing, but they don't like how he's doing it.
Sure.
And I think that number's probably grown a little bit. And then they look at it, an endorsement from John Sununu, and they feel it's kind of a slap in the face to the MAGA movement, and the things that they work so hard to do and help him get elected and help people like me get elected, because he's so far against the president. They're like, what's going on? So there's an opportunity there, I think, for me to continue to be that independent person. And then, there's the people who just hate them, and they're usually Democrats. There's very few Republicans.
Right.
And I think what you're going to see in the recently coming up is with the big beautiful bill, you're going to have the tax refunds, you're going to have the Social Security rebates, you're going to have the no tax on tips and overtime, you're going to see the $100 million a year for 5 years for our rural health centers,
Right.
you're going to see the $200 million at the Portsmouth Naval Shipyard that Chris Pappas voted against. And so did every other member of our delegation. I think once that clicks in, and the economy gets a little better,
Right.
I think you'll see that those numbers get back to where they were.
New Hampshire's a small state, and so you think the politics is going to be pretty local. It never dawned on me that we'd be talking about Jeffrey Epstein in the U.S. Senate race in 2026. I actually think the most interesting New Hampshire Epstein story is Senator Jeanne Shaheen dumping gazillions of dollars on Dean Cayman hiring Stephanie Shaheen for a no-show job. Now you find out Cayman has for years had a relationship with Epstein that no one knew about, and there are all these photos of Steffi in the cockpit with Dean Cayman, and so that's to me that's more interesting. But Johnny's not Johnny, I don't know that the name John Sununu has appeared in an email. No E, no H, so it's kind of open question. And Johnny Sununu's campaign released a statement saying, "This is not us. The guy, the two people involved in this are all liars. The emails, whatever. Nothing to see here. Move along." Is that explanation sufficient for you, Scott Brown?
Well, if you look at what's happening with the dump, I mean, I supported it. I'm already on record on that. But it's real. It's not a Democrat versus Republican issue. It's a good versus evil. I mean, this guy was evil, and it's also reflective of the things that you're seeing happen. It's the insiders, the people with the money, the rich, the famous, who have the names like the Sununus and the Clintons, who are being basically protected or were being protected, and now they're not. Versus people like me and you and others who basically will never be part of that inner circle and will never have the benefits that they have. Listen, it was mentioned. I think he needs to fully explain why. And, to say it's a fabrication, I don't think is the right answer that people want to hear.
So simply, he says that this is he's never met him. His dad's never met these people. This is two people just talking to each other. He doesn't know how they got involved. No connection to me whatsoever.
Yeah, listen, I don't think, fine, I'll take him at that word. I mean, you saw Jon Stewart, they're talking about him as well. And I thought he had the proper response. He kind of laughed it off and said, oh,
Right.
that sort of thing. But, it's unusual, especially with the Stephanie Shaheen issue and the Jeanne Shaheen, supporting, Cayman, who's done all these things, apparently, allegedly with Epstein and had that relationship. I mean, that's, multimillionaires. That's what they do. They have
Mhm.
relationships with people like that.
So one of the biggest concerns, and we'll kind of start wrapping up with this, that Republicans have is you're looking at a midterm election with Republicans in power. So right away, the party in power, looking at a bad year, generally speaking. Then you've got President Trump's poll numbers. They are in many polls the lowest they've ever been, in near all-time lows. Certainly in ours, the lowest they've ever been. And there's just a real concern that election day is going to show up and Republicans aren't going to really be motivated to turn out. The Democrats will pour into the polls because they hate Trump and they want to vote against Trump. And so voting against you or any other Republican is a vote against Trump. So one side will be pitchforks and torches. The other side will be, I'm just going to stay home and watch some more Netflix. What can Scott Brown do to energize Republican voters to get them to turn out in November?
First of all, I think that's a good analysis. And it's certainly something we speak about every day. And we've already have a plan. We're executing that plan. And part of it is going, driving a couple of hours to meet 12 people and energizing them and showing them that we can win and laying it out as to how we win. I know how I'm going to win the primary. I mean, I did it before against Bob Smith, who's an endorser, against Jim Rubens, beat him by 50%, and along with a handful of other people. It's a very similar plan. It's getting out the vote. It's that shoe leather that New Hampshire people respect. 3 or 4 more times. We don't rely on monarchies. It's not anointed. The two anointed people, as I said, and the insiders are Pappas and Sununu. I'm an outsider. People like being in helping outsiders, the underdogs. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to work my ass off. And to think somehow, people say, oh, you need to drop out now. Like you read this stuff and like, first of all, these people never ran a race. They've never participated in helping anyone run a race. And a lot of those people have been with the Sununus for decades. I get it. I get it. They're a good family. I have a ton of respect for the father and for Chris. I don't even know John, but there's a path. If I'm not like stupid. I understand that it's going to be tough.
Mhm.
So what? Who cares? I love tough things.
But the argument that once again, just do pure sports analysis. It doesn't matter. Scott Brown, love him, hate him.
Is
Johnny
it
Snoo,
the
love him,
Red
hate him.
Sox versus the Yankees analysis,
Exactly. Well,
or the
this is
Patriots
no.
versus the world?
This is starting quarterback analysis.
Okay.
That in the kind of game you have to play New Hampshire, which is not a Republican state. It's not Idaho or South Carolina. And the kind of Republicans who win, they're not the Bob Smiths of the past. They're not even the, Jeb Bradleys of the past. That if you're going to be competitive, you need someone who comes more from the, whatever traditional, old school, moderate. I'm not being pejorative or positive, just from that lane. And you're in the wrong lane. It's not a knock on you as a person, just you're in the wrong lane. If you want to win in New Hampshire, the kind of Republican who can win is a Johnny Snooner Republican, or no Republican can win. That's the analysis. Is that legit, or is that just wrong?
No, first of all, I'm not sure what you mean by, I'm not that type of Republican. I'm a Scott Brown Republican. I'm the most independent person in this race right now. John's been in lockstep, with his party forever. He's been out of touch with his party for almost 20 years. And, yeah, he's got a good name, but people want to see him. They want to listen to him. They want to have him answer real questions and not fluff it off. So I think there's a path there. And so do the people that are supporting me. That's why I'm here 3 or 4 hours a day making phone calls, asking people for their support and money and organizing events and fundraisers.
Right.
Because it's not over till it's over. I use the Yankees Red Sox. I mean, that's a perfect example. The Patriots down to what, 27-3 against Atlanta. These things happen. And I don't think it's even that much of a long shot. I read the bills, I see how they affect our state, country, debt, and deficit, and I vote. And I'm going to speak up when I feel it's appropriate. And John won't do that. He's going to be so, John, I need your vote. I need you to jump. And he's going to say, how high, sir? He's got no choice. You know how the president is. He's got no choice. I don't have that problem.
Well, we have a problem. We're out of time, but I really
No, come
appreciate you,
on.
Scott Brown, joining us here on the New Hampshire Journal podcast. Thanks so much, and we will talk again soon.
ScottBrown.com, everybody. Thanks, Michael. Have a great one. And go Patriots.